Robert Maynard Hutchins was born on January 17, 1899, in Brooklyn, New York, to William J. Hutchins. Robert, also known as Maynard, was the second of three sons. Both of his father and grandfather were Presbyterian ministers. At the age of 8, he moved to Oberlin, Ohio, where his father taught at Oberlin College. Hutchins attended this institution from 1915 to 1917. While at Oberlin, he was influenced deeply by the community's ideals. The community of Oberlin, Ohio was dedicated to evangelical ideas, including hard work ethic and righteous thinking. These influences stayed with him for the rest of his life, and maybe even helped shape his educational theories he became known for. At the age of 18, World War I had just begun, and Robert, along with his two brothers, enlisted in the United States Army, where they were part of the ambulance service. While serving in the U.S. Army, Hutchins was awarded the Italian Croce di Guerra during his station in Italy. After returning from the war, he attended Yale University. While at Yale, Robert finished his graduation requirements and enrolled in law school. Robert graduated from Yale in 1921 and then went on to teach high school history and English in Lake Placid, New York. After teaching high school for a short time, he began an astonishing career with the Yale Corporation as a fundraiser and administrator, as well as faculty member of the law school. While at Yale, he also continued his degree in law, graduating at the top of his class. At this time, the Yale Law School was primarily dominated by legal realists, and Hutchins sought to promote legal realism during his time as dean. Legal realism was very popular in the 1920s. Those that believed in legal realism operated on a premise that the law, whatever that may be, is concerned with and is tied to the real-world outcomes of particular cases. Accepting this premise moves jurisprudence, or the study of law, in the abstract, away from hypothetical predictions and closer to empirical reflections of fact. During his time at Yale, Hutchins sought to modernize the university with more interdisciplinary courses. This was achieved by giving the students more autonomy on campus, autonomy being the right to give oneself their own law. He also established the Institute of Human Relations, which brought together two different departments on campus. The Law and Medical Institute departments teamed up to study the psychological roots of crime and justice. By this time, Hutchins, being only 30 years old, became a national figure and was offered the job of president at the University of Chicago in 1929. It was during his time as president at the University of Chicago that he became known as both influential and controversial. Just like his time at Yale, he sought to modernize the University of Chicago. One of the most irritating traditions in higher education for modernizers such as Hutchins were the loco parentis rules in place of parents. When loco parentis were in place at a university, there were a basic set of guidelines and rules set up to monitor and control the social and moral behavior of students. This included rules on dancing, drinking, dating, and curfews. This was a tradition for most universities and colleges campuses when Hutchins was president of the University of Chicago. Hutchins believed that by the time students were at a college level, they were considered adults. By being considered adults, they were capable of making their own decisions when it came to their social behavior and education. While at the university, Hutchins also initiated a voluntary program whereby senior scholars turned over outside income to the university, and the university raised the pay scale for all professors, young and old alike. He wanted all professors to be on the same pay scale. These were just some of his attempts to modernize the University of Chicago. In 1930, he met and befriended Mortimer Adler. Adler became a true influence in Hutchins' life. Adler believed that pragmatism, the philosophical foundation of progressive education, was leading American civilization into decline. During his time at Yale, Hutchins was determined to make education more scientific, modern, and plural. But during his time at the University of Chicago, he substantially abandoned those goals and began to deeply question legal realism. By the 1940s, Hutchins advocated a unified liberal arts, humanistic curriculum for Chicago, not unlike that found in the great universities of the pre-modern period. The Thomistic model of education was oriented around a curriculum of great books and a hierarchy of truths. This curriculum would supposedly provide an antidote to the overwhelming emphasis on science and technology in modern education. The Thomistic model would become the basis of Hutchins' educational philosophy. He argued that education was becoming nothing more than a trade school, and a poor trade school at that. According to Hutchins in his essay, The Idea of a College, the specialization of American education has robbed students of the ability to communicate with other students outside of their field. He argued that a student of biology could not converse meaningfully with a student of mathematics, because they share no common educational experience. The curriculum that he introduced consisted of 14-year-long comprehensive courses, each integrating a basic field, the physical, biological, and social sciences, and the humanities. Students demonstrated mastery of a subject by passing a comprehensive examination that could be administered at any time, whether they attended classes or not. Hutchins believed that dialogue, rather than lecturing, was the best means of learning. He believed this to be true because he thought it would give each student more of an opportunity to come to their own determinations. He assumed that most students were influenced too much by the instructors and students' views around them. Critics and educators alike reacted to Hutchins' philosophies with outrage. Hutchins was able to implement his ideas regarding a 2-year generalist bachelor's during his tenure at Chicago, and subsequently had designated those studying in depth in a field as master's students. He was adamant that education was for education purposes only. He pulled the University of Chicago out of the Big Ten Conference and eliminated the school's football program, which he saw as a campus distraction. He also worked to eliminate fraternities and religious organizations for the same reason. The business community, as well as donors, became highly skeptical of the value of the program and were eventually able to have the 4-year traditional degrees reinstated. The university was having major financial difficulties. Many people that had donated before were no longer donating because of the controversial Hutchins. College enrollment had also decreased during this time. Critics viewed him as a dangerous idealist who pushed the school out of the limelight and temporarily thwarted its possible expansion, while his supporters argued that it was his changes that kept Chicago intellectually unique. Modified and reduced in form, the collegiate curriculum to this day reflects the great books and Socratic method championed by Hutchins' secular perennialism. After serving 6 years as chancellor at the University of Chicago, Hutchins left the university in 1951. Hutchins became head of the Ford Foundation. During this time, there was rapid growth in the automotive industry, which attracted unwanted attention from the Internal Revenue Service. Therefore, the foundation was set up to further the cause of peace. This unwanted attention gave Hutchins the opportunity to collect substantial funds and apply them in his different areas of interest. One fund that he established that still stands today is the Fund for the Advancement of Education. This fund sponsored different projects that included the nationwide teacher training and college early entrance programs at 12 colleges. 3 of the 12 colleges still use the program today. The university closest to us still using it being the University of Utah. In 1954, he was named president of the Fund for the Republic, which advocated no restrictions on freedom of thought and expression in the United States. In 1959, he founded the Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions, which approached his ideal of a community of scholars in Santa Barbara, California. Besides his own published works on education, Hutchins was chairman of the board of editors of the Encyclopedia Britannica from 1943 until his retirement in 1974. This controversial educator died on May 17, 1977. Even though many people, including scholars and students alike, were skeptical of his teaching methods throughout his life, much of our education system today has been based on and designed after his ideas and theories. Robert Hutchins was definitely influential and left his mark on the educational world. I can see where there would have been many critics throughout his life. After studying about Robert Hutchins, I tend to disagree with some of his theory. One of the reasons being that I think that it takes all kinds of people to have a successful world. Some of us are made for higher education, some of us are made for trade schools, and some of us are made to enter the workforce right off. Either way, I feel it is important for a person to pursue what is going to make them happy. Educational goals and aspirations are not the same for everyone. Now I understand why we are required to have some of the general classes we have when we begin college, and why. He believed it would give students a better opportunity of becoming well-rounded individuals.